Hello everyone, my name is Robert Oji. I'm the pastor at Cutler Bay Worship Center right here in beautiful Cutler Bay, Florida. And this is day 4 of Be Encouraged, God is our provider. Yesterday, we read from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3 to 10. And I finished with saying this. I believe that Proverbs 3:9, which says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all of your produce, is twofold. First, it is to give. It is to be generous. That's really what the verse is reminding us to do. It's a call to give back to God, to honor Him with our finances. The book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 10 says, listen, bring your tithe or a tenth of the first of your increase to the storehouse so that there may be food in my house. The role of the Old Testament storehouse is likened to the role of the New Testament church. So there's an honoring God with our finances. But the second part is that I believe a big part of this is to honor God in our finances. Meaning, do we live a life of financial stewardship that honors God? Do we do well with what we have been entrusted with? We read yesterday from 2 Corinthians. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmer and then bread to eat. In the same way, He will provide and increase your resources and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. Yes, you will be enriched in every way so that you can always be generous. God provides, we manage. The provision of God is directly connected to our ability and our responsibility with what He provides. And the more I understand God's connection to my provision and the connection to my actions, the more I see God's hand in my life. Let me explain. Let's dig into today's verse for today. It's Psalm chapter 24, verse 1. It says this, it says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to Him. Now, this is a good one in our Be Encouraged series to memorize. This is a great one to memorize, to have on hand, because it's important. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to Him. Notice it doesn't say the earth is the Lord's and everything in it except what's yours. Because, well, I mean, that's yours. And for sure, whatever Bill Gates has, he's definitely worked hard for that. What the government has, that's their money. For sure, the church, well, I mean, yeah, obviously that's God's. That makes sense, the church, right? Don't be silly. No, it says the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Everything. The world and all its people belong to Him. Even He doesn't say, my chosen people, Israel, belong to me. He says, the world and all of its people belong to Him. Maybe I should have started with this on Monday, because when I got this, when I truly began to understand this, which, to be honest, I don't fully understand yet, but the more I do, the more I am at peace. And the more I don't cling and clutch my finances, but the more I learn to live with an open hand. So this is what we need to get, to really understand. I want you to hear this morning. God owns it all. It's His, all of it. Psalm chapter 50 is pretty amazing. It says this, it says, oh, my people, listen as I speak. I have no complaint about your sacrifices or the burnt offerings you constantly offer. But I don't need the bulls from your barns or the goats from your pens. Don't you realize all of the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills? I know every bird on the mountains, and all of the animals of the field are mine. Like, if I'm hungry, I don't need to tell you, for all the world is mine and everything in it. Do I eat the meat of bulls? Do I drink the blood of goats? Listen, make thankfulness your sacrifice to God, and keep the vows you made to the Most High. Then call on me when you are in trouble, and I will rescue you, and you will give me glory. Wow. What's God saying here? He's saying, listen, I don't need you to give to satisfy me. I need you to give because I put it in place as a system for your blessing. Keep the vows you made. What's that? Well, that's the law. That's the instruction that God gave them. God gave clear instruction on how to live how to live life, what to do with what they were given, to be good stewards, to be responsible people with their lives. And in that, they would be blessed. Leviticus, it's a book of instruction, the whole thing. It's all about the instruction of God for the people of Israel. And it says in chapter 25, verse 23, it says this, it says, "The land must never be sold on a permanent basis, for the land belongs to me. You are only foreigners and tenant farmers working for me." God's saying, you're only tenants on my land. The world is the Lord's, and what you have been entrusted to look after in this life, because he trusts you. So what's our responsibility? Our responsibility is make thankfulness our sacrifice to God and follow the instructions, or keep the vows we have made to the Most High. Jesus brings this beautifully into one of the parables that he tells. Now, I've always been I grew up hearing this as the parable of the talents. Okay, that's what it's called. But if you look at the New Living Translation, which I've been reading a lot lately, I really enjoy it, it actually calls it the parable of the three servants. And I think that's brilliant, because the parable isn't really about the talents, the money. It's about the people and how they use what God has given them. The premise of the story is this. A king, he needs to go on a trip. So he takes his money that he's not taking with him. He's going to leave it behind. And he decides to divvy it up between three servants. He gives 5 amounts of money, or 5 talents, or the New Living calls it 5 bags of silver, to one, 2 to another, and 1 to the third one. This is a story of stewardship. The first, who was given 5, he takes that money and he invests it while the king is gone, and he ends up earning 5 more. The second, who was given 2, same thing, goes and he works this thing and he gets 2 more. Well, the third one, who was only given 1 talent, he digs a hole and he puts the money in the ground and he hides it until the king returns. Now, the king finally gets back home, and it's time to report on what they did. The first one says to the king, "King, you gave me 5. I got you 5 more." The king says, "Well done, man. You are so faithful. You have done well. Because you have shown responsibility, and because I can give you responsibility with what I've been given, what you've been given, I'm going to give you much more to be responsible for." And the second one comes and says, "King, you gave me 2, and I got you 2 more." The king says, "Wow, amazing. You've also been so faithful. And just like the first servant, I think you can handle more responsibility. This is great, guys." And the third one comes to the king and says, "Sir, I let fear dictate my actions with what you gave me. I didn't want to let you down. I didn't want to risk it and lose what you gave me. So I kind of just hid it so no one would take it. But here it is. I have it still. Sorry, it's a little dirty. It was in the ground." And the king is appalled. He says, "The ground? You stuck my money in the ground out back? What on earth, man? You could have at least taken it to the bank and I would have gained some interest on it. This is not cool, man. Not cool at all. Listen, I wanted to give you more, but you're just going to waste your time with it. So I can't do that. That wouldn't be responsible of me. So I'm going to give what I gave you to the guy who has 10. He had 5. He made 5 more. Now he's got 11, because I'm going to give him the one that you had. Listen, this is how it works." This is the king talking. "Listen, this is how it works. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away." I want you to hear this morning. God provides because it's all his. The question is, what will we do with what he has entrusted us with? The question is not about how much you've been entrusted with. The question is, what will you do with it? See, if the guy who got 1 had done well with it, he'd have been given another 1. And then he'd have 2. And he could go and get 2 more. And then he'd have 4. and he could go and get 4 more, and so on and so forth. His skill might not be the same as the guy who started with 5, or his life circumstances might not be the same as the guy who started with 2. And he might feel like, man, I wish I could have started with 5. But instead of that deterring him from being faithful with what he did get, he works it. And before long, he's gone from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8. And he doesn't mind that the guy who started with 5 went from 5 to 10 to 20 to 40. He's just thankful he's got 8. Because if the master ever comes and says, what did you do with my money? He can say, I've turned what you gave me into this much more. And what he will hear is, well done, you've been faithful. It doesn't matter how much we start with. When we recognize that all of it is God's to begin with, then there's no competition with other people who have more or less. It's that we've been all given something by God to work with. And it's not even necessarily about taking that money and trying to double it, like this story tells, right? It's about what we read in the Old Testament when the Bible says, be faithful. Start with faithfulness, thankfulness. Let thankfulness be your sacrifice, and listen to the instruction, or hold true to the vows you made to the Lord. When we begin to live a life of financial stewardship and do well with it, by honoring God with our finances and by doing well with what we have, then we are proving faithful. And it will be an increase or an abundance to us, is what he promises. Right? It doesn't matter how much we start with. When we recognize that it's all God's in the first place, then there's no competition between us. And we can just simply do well with what God has given us. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 and 24 says this. It says, work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord, rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ. Why? Because it's all his. And no matter the job, no matter the situation, no matter the amount, if it's in this world, it came from him. So use it to the best of your ability. God as our provider begins with us understanding that everything is the Lord's. So anything we have came from him. And it is our responsibility to do our very best with it. Why don't we pray this morning? God, we recognize that it is important to use what you have given us to the best of our ability. Would you help us? Would you give us wisdom? Would you give us the right people to teach us? Give us the right resources to teach us and to bring us into a place of being able to use what you have given us responsibly and honorably before you. So that when you come and say, what have you done with what I've given you? We can say, God, we've turned it into this. Through your help and through your guidance, we've turned what you've given us into this much more. And you'll look at us and say, well done. See, this isn't about works. This isn't about proving something to God. It's simply about honoring him with what he's given us. I hope you're blessed today. I hope you're thriving today. I hope you're healthy today. And I pray that you have just an amazing day. Why don't you go ahead and share this so that others can be blessed. And we'll see you tomorrow morning.